The wind howled around my father's main lodge, but the real storm was inside. Across the table, he handed my inheritance, Summit Enterprises, everything, to my brother, Liam, sneering that I was too weak, too much of a dreamer. Utterly alone, disinherited. Ever felt completely underestimated? Hit subscribe and comment below, because you won't believe the secret weapon that turned the tables and put me in charge overnight. Inside that dining room, the storm felt far worse than the gale howling outside the glass-paneled walls of the main mountain lodge. "Congratulations, Liam," Father Vance said, his voice devoid of warmth, as he slid a heavy envelope across the polished oak table to my younger brother. "You've earned it." The deed to the lodge, the controlling shares of Summit Enterprises, the offshore accounts, it was all his. I sat silently across from them, 34 years old and suddenly feeling 10 again. My palms were cold, pressed hard against my slacks as I struggled desperately to keep composed, to maintain a mask of indifference I didn't feel. Liam deliberately avoided my gaze. His lips were tight, his eyes cast low, studying the wood grain. My stepmother fidgeted nervously with her diamond necklace, her eyes glued to the expensive rug beneath her feet. Then, my father turned his icy attention to me. "And you, Alara," he sneered, the sound sharp and dismissive. "You've always been a dreamer, weak, far too compassionate to survive in the real world." My stomach dropped with a sickening lurch. There were 4 others in the room besides myself. Him, Liam, my stepmother, and the family attorney, Mr. Davies. But somehow, in that moment, I felt utterly, crushingly alone. He pushed a thick stack of papers toward the man in the suit. "Let's get this signed and finalized. Dad," I croaked, the word barely audible over the pounding in my ears. "Please don't do this." He rolled his eyes with exaggerated impatience. "Spare me, Alara. You chose to leave, remember? You wanted to find purpose." He sneered, raising his fingers in mocking air quotes. "You walked away from this family, from Summit Enterprises, to work in some underfunded clinic overseas. For what? No money, no title, just wasted years. You never even asked why I left," I whispered, the words lost in the heavy silence. "You never cared." "And I still don't," he snapped back instantly, "because Liam was here. Liam showed loyalty." "He showed you exactly what you wanted to see," I said quietly, though my voice trembled slightly. "But he lied to you." My father let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's just jealousy talking, pure and simple." The attorney, a grey-haired man named Mr. Davies, shifted awkwardly in his expensive suit, his fingers tightening around the leather folder in his lap. "Actually," he interjected, clearing his throat suddenly. "Before anyone signs anything," he paused, letting the weight of his words settle, "there's something you all should hear." My father frowned, irritation flashing across his face. "What is it, Davis?" Mr. Davies looked him straight in the eye. "There's a sealed amendment to the will, added 6 years ago at the specific request of your late mother, Grandmother Vance." My heart gave a sudden, powerful jump. My grandmother, the only one who ever truly saw me. My grandmother, the only one who used to say I had more strength in my silence than most people had in their loudest moments. "What amendment?" My father snapped, his irritation escalating rapidly. "That's ridiculous. She had no such authority." Mr. Davies calmly opened the leather folder and withdrew a yellowed, official-looking document. "She did, Mr. Vance," he replied, his tone firmer now. She retained 51% ownership in Summit Enterprises until the day she passed. You never challenged it during probate. Legally, she had every right. This was filed during her final appointment with the notary. Her instructions were clear. It was to remain sealed unless you ever attempted to disinherit Ilara. My father's face twitched. Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My stepmother froze, her hands still resting on the diamond pendant she always wore when she needed to feel powerful. Mr. Davies turned to me, his expression neutral. Miss Vance, would you like to read it, or shall I? I didn't move. My eyes locked on the heavy envelope still clutched in Liam's hand, the one holding everything my father believed he controlled. Read it, I said softly. He cleared his throat and unfolded the page. In the event that my granddaughter Ilara Vance is deemed unworthy by her father, I hereby grant her full authority over my share of Summit Enterprises, to be enacted immediately. All voting rights are to be transferred to her name upon activation of this clause. This amendment shall override any previous agreements regarding decision-making or ownership within the company or family estate. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows, softer now, as though even the storm outside was holding its breath, waiting. What the hell does that mean? My father finally barked, his voice raw with disbelief. It means, Mr. Davis said, turning his gaze slowly toward me, that your daughter, Ilara Vance, is now the majority shareholder of Summit Enterprises. Nothing you signed today regarding company control can override that. My father shot to his feet, the heavy oak chair screeching violently backward on the floor. This is absurd. She doesn't even understand the business. Maybe not your version of it, I said, rising slowly, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor inside. But I know how to lead, how to protect, how to build without tearing people down. I took a step forward, feeling a strength I hadn't known I possessed. You said I was useless, but I never needed your validation. I turned back to Mr. Davies. Let's move forward. We have a company to run. Liam just stared blankly at the table. My stepmother opened her mouth as if to speak, then clamped it shut. My father never sat back down. If you felt that moment shift the power back where it truly belonged, don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will leave even her father speechless. He just stood there, silent, rigid, as the world he thought he controlled shifted beneath him. I'd barely reached the corridor when footsteps hurried behind me. Ilara! Liam called out. I turned. His voice was deceptively calm, but his eyes were cold, calculating. You don't have to do this, he said. Do what? I asked quietly. Push me out. He shrugged, a feigned casualness in his tone. That's your next move, isn't it? I haven't made a move, I replied, keeping my voice even. I simply stood up for what's mine. He chuckled, a humorless sound. You think signing some papers makes you powerful? You don't have the backbone to lead Summit Enterprises. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I didn't flinch. I'm not here to prove myself to you, Liam. I'm here to lead with integrity, something this family seems to have forgotten. He stepped uncomfortably close. I give you 2 months, he sneered, lowering his voice. Before you crawl back begging for help. The company's not a charity, Ilara. It's a battlefield. No, I replied, lifting my chin slightly. It's a platform, and I'll use it to build, not break. You really are naive, he muttered, shaking his head before turning sharply and walking away. But something about the way he left, his clenched fists, the rigid set of his shoulders, stuck with me. This wasn't surrender, it was just the beginning. The next few days moved like storm clouds rolling in. Word travelled fast. Ilara Vance was back. I didn't fire anyone. I listened. And what I found was worse than I expected. Departments pitted against each other, promotions based on loyalty, burnout ignored. One afternoon, entering the break room, conversation stopped cold. A cleaner named Sophia stood slowly. We weren't allowed to sit if Mr. Liam walked in. That changes today, I told her. That night, I stayed late, buried in spreadsheets and personnel files. The picture became clearer and more disturbing with every page. I found 3 significantly misused departmental budgets, a suspiciously lucrative deal inked with a questionable supplier linked to Liam's college roommate, and, most damningly, a list of employees who had been abruptly terminated shortly after raising ethical concerns or questioning financial discrepancies. This wasn't just poor management or simple negligence. It was systemic rot, deliberately cultivated. If I didn't act fast, decisively, I'd inevitably be blamed when the whole corrupted structure inevitably collapsed. The very next morning, Liam stormed into my office without knocking, his face a mask of fury. He slammed a thick manila folder onto my desk. "You want the CEO seat?" he snapped, his voice tight with anger. "Let's see you survive this." Inside were printouts, screenshots of fabricated emails, digitally altered photos suggesting impropriety, transcripts of faked conversations. "These are fake," I said, my voice quiet but firm as I flipped through the crudely assembled evidence. "Can you prove it?" He smirked, leaning over the desk. "You really want to destroy me over this?" I asked, looking up at him. "I want what's mine," he hissed, abandoning all pretense. "You were never meant to win this, Ilara." I stood slowly, matching his gaze. "I don't want to win, Liam. I want to fix what you broke." "I see power," he sneered contemptuously. "You see weakness." Then he turned on his heel and walked out, leaving the toxic file and the palpable sense of battle behind him. I realized this wasn't just sibling rivalry anymore. This was war. But I had something Liam didn't. The truth. Within 48 hours, however, headlines flooded the news cycle. New Summit Enterprises CEO accused in charity fraud. Family feud erupts at Vance conglomerate. Ilara Vance. Legacy leader or liability? It didn't matter that the evidence was fake. The damage was immediate. The public didn't wait for verification. My inbox exploded with frantic PR alerts. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with concerned, sometimes accusatory calls. Shareholders were panicking, threatening to divest. I had barely begun, and I was already bleeding credibility, watching years of careful reputation building crumble. I told myself repeatedly to stay calm, to trust the process. But late one night, locked alone in my vast, inherited office, I finally broke. Not with loud, messy sobs, but curled tightly on the leather couch, silent tears tracing paths down my cheeks. I wasn't crying because they didn't believe me. I was crying because maybe, just maybe, my father had been right all along. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this brutal world. Then came a soft, hesitant knock. I wiped my eyes furiously, but the door opened anyway. Sophia stood there tentatively, holding a steaming paper cup. "Thought you could use this," she murmured. "You didn't have to," I whispered, my voice thick. "You look like you needed it," she said simply, walking further into the room. "No one ever brought me anything when I cried in this building. Maybe someone should break the cycle." Something inside me cracked again, but this time it felt like healing. Thank you, I managed. She sat across from me. Miss Alara, she said quietly, you always looked me in the eye. You have loyalty earned through kindness. The next morning, bolstered by Sophia's quiet act of solidarity and my grandmother's enduring faith, I walked into the Summit Enterprises boardroom with a newfound, quiet resolve. I let them speak first, the cascade of accusations, the thinly veiled doubts, the outright demands for my immediate resignation. One agitated shareholder even threatened a class action lawsuit based on Liam's fabricated evidence. When the barrage finally subsided, I stood slowly. If anyone here, I said, my voice clear and steady, resonating in the tense silence, can provide verifiable proof that those documents alleging fraud are real, I will step down today. Silence. No one moved. Then I carefully laid the original reports onto the polished table, irrefutable evidence of Liam's financial misconduct, the slush funds, the hush money payments, the unethical side deals. I turned on the large projector screen. Security footage played. Liam, looking furtive, entering a locked records office after hours, plugging in a USB drive, transferring files. The timestamp perfectly matched when the forged documents were digitally created. No one spoke. Truth matters, I said softly. But I didn't come here to destroy my brother. I came to repair what he broke. I turned to the company attorney, Mr. Davis. My grandmother gave me this role not because I was perfect, but because she believed I still valued people. Liam is suspended, effective immediately. A full, independent investigation will proceed. Stunned expressions met my gaze. Then Mr. Coleman, a retired, respected board member, stood. I doubted you, Miss Vance, he admitted gruffly. But today, you reminded us why this company was built. It was about people. The energy shifted palpably. Liam didn't return to Summit Enterprises. The investigation proceeded quietly, confirming everything I had presented. But 2 days after the boardroom confrontation, I received a letter delivered by courier bearing his unmistakable handwriting. Alara, it began. I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't just want control. I wanted to be seen. I always thought you got the love I never did. Maybe you just earned it differently. Liam. I folded the stark note carefully and placed it beside my grandmother's old compass on my desk. Not every ending needs a sword plunged deep. Some arrive in stillness, and perhaps some beginnings are born from acknowledging a painful truth, however partial. A month passed. The office felt different, not quieter, but more awake, energized. The media retracted the false claims, some murmuring about luck, but those who mattered, the employees and the board, saw the truth. Not because I shouted louder, but because I held the line with integrity. One person, though, remained conspicuously silent. My father. No angry messages, no lawyers, nothing. I assumed he'd retreated to lick his wounds somewhere far away. Until one Sunday morning, I walked into my quiet office for some weekend work, and there he was, sitting in the visitor's chair across from my desk, hands folded loosely in his lap, his eyes dull, devoid of their usual fire. I had to see it, he said, his voice raspy. See what? I asked cautiously. That you didn't burn it all down, he murmured, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. He looked older, smaller, utterly tired. For once, not like a man in control, but like one profoundly lost. You were right, he said softly, the admission hanging heavy in the air. About me, about Liam, about how this place stopped being about people long ago. I studied him, searching his face for the familiar manipulation, but finding only weariness. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He pulled something worn from his inner coat pocket, a faded photograph. Me at 12, maybe 13, covered in brightly coloured paint, standing beside Grandma Vance, who was laughing heartily. "She always said you'd change this family," he whispered, his gaze fixed on the image. I just didn't want to believe it. "If I did," I said gently, understanding dawning, "it's because she believed in me first." He finally nodded, meeting my eyes. "I came to say something I should have said decades ago." A pause. "I'm sorry, Alara, for everything." Part of me wanted to rage, to say it was too late, but healing doesn't start with blame. It starts when someone finally dares to break the cycle. "Thank you," I replied simply. He gave a quiet, almost imperceptible nod before slipping out the door. 2 weeks later, Sophia brought me a folder, a list of every employee my father had unjustly let go for speaking up. We sent out letters, invitations to return. Summit Enterprises didn't just look warmer, it felt it. Liam and I met once for coffee, awkward, but a start. Then, an anonymous 7-figure donation arrived at the women's shelter I once worked for. My father's quiet way. It was enough. I didn't get revenge. I got something far stronger. Genuine respect, hard-won peace, and a future for Summit Enterprises built on a foundation no one could tear down. Now, when I walk into that boardroom, I don't hear nervous whispers of doubt. I hear the steady footsteps of people who believe not just in me, but in the ethical way we're now building together. My story proves that real power isn't about shouting the loudest or crushing dissent. It resides firmly in quiet integrity, in the profound strength required to choose kindness even when faced with cruelty. Legacy isn't just inherited wealth or name. It's truly built on how you make people feel, the positive, lasting impact you leave behind. If my journey resonated with you, please drop a comment below. Tell me what part hit hardest or what you might have done differently. I read every word because connection fuels this entire path forward. And if you're currently facing your own version of being underestimated, please know this. You absolutely don't have to shout to be heard. Just stand steady in your unwavering truth. Believe in healing through strength and strength through kindness. Subscribe to the channel if you share that belief, because sometimes the quietest ones truly carry the loudest, most enduring legacies.